All right, welcome to the first episode of Behind the Scenes of the Off Season. I'm your host, as always, Jared Perkins, but we have an incredible guest with us today, PJ Conlon, a former pitcher with the New York Mets. PJ, how are you doing today?
I'm doing well. Happy to be here. Thanks for inviting me on.
Yeah, we're excited to have you on. I mean, your journey is a fun one to look at and an interesting one to look at too. But just for the viewers who don't know you, kind of share your story about through professional baseball, kind of who you are outside of the game as well.
Well, I guess I got to start with I was born in Ireland, but I grew up in California. So that's just the background right there at the beginning. We'll get that out of the way. I played college baseball at the University of San Diego. After my junior year, I was drafted by the New York Mets in the 13th round. Um, did the whole minor league grind and was lucky enough to be called up in 2018. And when that happened, I was the first, Irish born major leaguer since 1945. So that was kind of a cool little deal that happened. And yeah, I only pitched in 3 games, in the big leagues. And I was in the big leagues in 2018 and then retired, towards the end of the year in 2019. So it was a quick transition for me. It was made that pinnacle and then kind of was like, all right, what's next?
Yeah. Talk about, I guess, the first thing I want to ask, growing up as an Irish citizen, kind of what it meant for you to be the first Irish-born player since 1945 to play in the major leagues, and kind of what that. I know you used to have the colors of the flag on your glove as well. Just talk about like what that meant to you and kind of how you carried that with you.
I mean, it was a huge honor. My mom's side of the family is all Scottish. She's from Scotland. My dad's side of the family is from Ireland. He was born and raised in Ireland. And so um, have that on both sides of the family. Both parents came here when they were high school age. And so kind of playing baseball was sort of new, even when I was a kid. My dad, I think, played 1 year and said the only time he got on base was when he got hit by the pitch because he didn't know what he was doing. He was a soccer player. And yeah, so I always knew it was, a rare sort of thing. And I always, I took a lot of pride in it. I really wanted to make it to the big leagues and, be that first pitcher, that first player since 1945. I knew the background and I knew, how much it meant to like my family and stuff like that, because they all became huge
Yeah.
baseball fans. Even when we were kids, my cousins and everything played. And yeah, and then when I got there, it was, got a lot of support from people in Ireland and a lot of people reaching out and stuff like that. And it was, it was awesome. It seemed to, impact, kind of baseball over there. And that meant a lot to me personally.
Yeah, so as you know, we focus on the human side of things, and I think that's the one cool thing to hear about the heritage and such a important role it plays for you in your career. And you had the opportunity to also be in the World Baseball Classic qualifiers with Great Britain. Talk a little bit about that and being able to, like you said, and kind of embrace that heritage, but also get to play on play on the world stage a little bit more, representing, I guess, your country. I know there's some political issues there, of course, with that, but kind of dive into that a little bit.
I actually never played with Great Britain.
Oh,
I got the offer to and stuff and talked about it with my family and,
yeah.
just figured, it wasn't the best decision for, kind of, where my family comes from and the whole reason that, we left Ireland when I was a kid and
Hmm.
around that kind of stuff. So, I was super, thankful and stuff to even be offered to play for them. But just, kind of, decided that I wasn't going to put myself in the middle of that.
Yeah, yeah. That's sorry. I remember now that I remember reading the discussion that you had chose not to play in the qualifier.
Mhm.
But I mean, that's kind of shows true too on how much your heritage means to you going in through the game, and I think that's an awesome human side thing to focus on as well. The one question I have, just for you, because I know you had the opportunity to make your major league debut. What was that moment like for you, and to be able to all the work that you put in on your journey to be able to finally make that major league debut?
I mean, I think about that day all the time,
Yeah.
because ever since I was a kid, that was the goal. That was the one thing, when I was in first grade, you do those assignments. What do you want to be when you're older? It was always, I want to be a professional baseball player. And
Yeah.
yeah, making it to the minor leagues, you're a professional baseball player. And that was, realizing that goal. But obviously, there's that pinnacle of making it to the major leagues. And so when I got that call, it was just kind of like, I called my mom, called my family, like couldn't help but like shed a couple tears. It was like,
Yeah.
it's even when you're in AAA or when you're playing well in AA, you're moving up each year, that you're not that far away, but it always seems like it's so far, even when in reality, you're right on the doorstep. So to get that call and to be able to, say I made it to the major leagues, it was, the best feeling ever. And I thought I was going to be super nervous when I went there, and it was in Cincinnati. Had to take a red eye, to get there in the morning. So obviously didn't sleep much on the plane, but once I got there, and I was nervous before the game, in the clubhouse, because you're around these guys that you see on TV. Yeah, you're around them in spring training, you get to know them a little bit, but it's a little different when it's, the regular season and it actually
Yeah.
counts. But then once I got on the field, just kind of all those nerves kind of went away. And because it was just, I'm just playing baseball. And it was kind of one of those things where it was just like, I kind of took all the pressure off myself. I was like, obviously, I want to do really well, and I want to perform, and I want to show I belong here. But just kind of went into it, just, like enjoy it. Like,
Yeah.
you never know, like this could be the one game I ever get to pitch. I don't want to be stressed out and worried. I just want to, go out there and play and enjoy myself and take it in. And, I had a ton of family fly to Cincinnati, and there wasn't a ton of fans in the ballpark that day. So I could hear them, even during the game, just kind of
Yeah.
felt like it was high school or, travel ball all over again. So yeah, it was really, really great memories from that.
Yeah, that's not the easiest ballpark to get your major league debut in either as a pitcher.
Oh yeah, I mean, the first hit I gave up was a home run to Billy Hamilton, so I'll never forget that.
Yeah, I got that small park and small yard. So I mean, that's incredible. You talked a little bit too how you said that you made it through each level, but every level kind of seemed like it was far away. What helped you keep that mindset right in the right place, keep going after that goal? Because sometimes it can be say like, oh, I have to go through one more level, I have to do this another year. What really helped you overcome some of that adversity and really keep your mindset in the right place?
I mean, I think for me personally, I've always been able to, have a very even keel, personality. When I'm playing, that competitive fire takes over and stuff. But
Hmm.
even when I'd have a bad game, I'd get taken out of the game, and, I'd be in the dugout, and it was just, I could instantly let go of it. I could instantly,
Yeah.
go hang out with my buddies on the team and just flush it. And I think that was really, I think that was huge for me personally. I didn't hold on to things. But I think going along with that, I was really lucky to have, I made incredible friends through my time playing with the Mets, and, I was lucky enough to kind of stay with the same, group of guys through each level. And just having those good friends that are going through the same thing that you're going through. And, if, you need to get something off your chest, or you just need someone to vent to, they're right there for you all the time. And you can be that same crutch for them. And it just builds a bond um, that's really special, because, you're taking these long bus rides, you're playing in these, towns that are, kind of in the middle of nowhere sometimes, and not having the best facilities and things like that. So it really brings you together with the people that you're around. And I was
Yeah.
lucky, like I said, I was lucky enough to have a really, great group of guys that, we moved up together through the ranks. And so that was, I mean, I don't know if I didn't have, those kind of guys to rely on, it could have been a completely different story.
Yeah, I mean, you hit on two things we hear from a lot of players who join the podcast too. Steven Souza Jr. talked about like his identity was so wrapped up in the game that when he was struggling, he's like, I didn't know where to go. Like I had
Mhm.
nowhere, and like, you having those resources and those people that you could kind of go to outside of the game, I think is huge. Talk about some of the passions that you have away from baseball that really helped you separate from your performances. I know it's a little bit of probably of a mindset thing to just kind of let those performances go, but did you have tools and other things that you utilized to really help you separate?
I think, I mean, probably when I got to high school, I was kind of a real hothead. And
Yeah.
so I was lucky enough to, have coaches and people that I respected, kind of give me books and kind of, teach me, this mental side of things and how to, control the things you can control. So
Mm.
I was working on that for a long time. And I think I really, once I got to college, kind of, took that to heart and really made that a point to, excel at that side of things. But I don't know, like I said, just the guys that, I lived with and played with through the minors, like we'd go home and if we wanted to talk about baseball, you could, but most of the time it was just there was no baseball talk. We just play video games, have a couple beers, hang out, and just completely detach from that because you see some guys just get way too wrapped up in it and then
Yeah.
they just kind of spiral and one bad day turns into a bad week, which turns into a bad month. Um, and yeah, so just kind of like you said, just having different things. Like you said, we just play video games and we just, just mess around and just have a good time, while chasing this dream that's, you've been working your whole life for. So you want to take it really seriously, but being able to, let it and, you know, just detach, like I said.
Yeah. I mean, that it's important to have those relationships too because the game's going to end for everybody. Everybody who plays it, they all have an end date, whether you play for 20 years, whether you play for 5 years. And a lot of times, even if you have that 20-year career, your career is going to end in your 40s. You're still young and like you still have a whole entire life ahead of you. And I think the one thing that you hit on that's spot on is that everything in life is about the relationships you develop with the people around you, right? Everything else kind
Absolutely.
of has a beginning and an end, but the people that you keep around you, those are the people who are going to kind of drive you and really kind of help motivate you.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, in a couple months going to one of my buddy's weddings that I met playing with the Mets. I'm lucky enough to live 5 minutes away from another guy, Corey
Yeah.
Oswald, that played with through the Mets as well. So and just a lot of these guys that I played with are done for the most part, playing as well, and we're all over the country and stuff. But just randomly checking in, you see they posted something on Instagram, send them a message, and it's
Yeah.
like it's you go through so much with those guys that when you can go years without talking to them, but then once you finally do or you cross paths and you see them, it's like you're right back where you guys were, and that just it just keeps coming back to, it's just that special bond that, it's I mean, you're kind of forced to, create and it's awesome.
Yeah. And those are the best kind of relationships you can have too, right? You can spend time apart, don't even talk, but then you get back and together in person. It's just like the old days. So,
Exactly. It's like you never left. Those are my
yeah.
favorite.
Yeah. So now you kind of the one question I have too, because you announced your retirement, retired kind of on your own terms. So what went into that decision for you to decide to retire and and leave the game of baseball that you just loved your whole entire life?
Um, to be honest, it was a very, rash decision on my part. So like I said, got called up in 2018, only pitched in 3 games, and then didn't even get a September call up that year.
Mm.
So that was a little, right there is when it kind of, stopped being about baseball and kind of saw like the business side of things. And then going into 2019, the Mets got a completely new front office. And so in the offseason could kind of just get the feel that I was in a different spot with these, the new guys that were running the team. Um, and like I said, just it stopped being about, the game and it stopped kind of being fun for me.
Yeah.
So the last week of that 2019 spring training, I tweaked a hamstring like a couple days from breaking camp, you
Mm.
know? And
Yeah.
so, but it was like, a week, maybe two, I'm good. But then all of a sudden I was kept in extended spring training for like a month. So
Yeah.
starting the year off on like kind of sour note, finally get sent to AA, pitch in 1 game in AA, then go to AAA. Played about 6 weeks in AAA and then had like, I even forget what it's called, like I had to get like an MRI on my UCL, and there was no
Mm,
significant damage, but there was a strain in there. So rehab for about 6 weeks in Florida at the facility, and then went out on a rehab assignment in Low A Brooklyn, the first pro team I ever played on, and was there for about 3 weeks. Did everything I needed to do, and it was just kind of getting restless there, because in my head I'm like, I was a big leaguer last year. In my mind I'm like, I can still help the team.
yeah,
I put together a couple good outings. They need a guy I know I can perform, and was just kind of just kept getting the runaround when I'm like, when am I getting out of here? I'm ready, I'm healthy, I've showed this. And it just kind of got to the point where it was like, it's either like I'm gonna get you guys put me on a team. Like I am totally fine going to Double A. Like I have no ego there. Double A, it's a competitive league. I'd face good
yeah.
guys there too. Like I don't have to go to Triple A. And just kind of just kept getting the same runaround. And so just kind of told my agent to let him know like I wanted my release. Hopped on a plane from New York back to California. And even when I hopped on that plane, or when I went home, I still thought I was going to play. I was like, I'll sit out the last month of the season. I'll have a good off season, sign with the team, and start a whole new journey with the new team, because it wasn't performance based. It was just
Yeah.
kind of bad luck through little injuries. Um, but when I was at home, I kind of I had 2 semesters left of college, had that bad taste in my mouth from that last year of pro ball, and just I was 25, and I was like, maybe it's time to do something else.
Mm,
And so I just kind of made the decision. I was like, let's go back to school, let's get my degree, which is always another goal that I had. Had the goal of making the major leagues, did that, and I always wanted to graduate from school. So I was like, let's go do this. And it just happened. The year I decided to go back to school was the year COVID hit. So
mm,
that was a whole different
yeah.
thing, ready to be in classrooms and do that whole thing again. And then was kind of everything was online.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting you talk about that because we just interviewed Mark Appel recently, and when he decided to step away from the game, he got a ton of flack. But he's like, there was this constant pressure that was always hanging over me, right? Because he was the number one
Mhm.
overall pick. I know it's kind of a different scenario, but still, I think it's the same pressure that kind of hangs over all guys' heads.
Yeah.
Because once you make that major league debut, right, there's that pressure to want to get back that kind of just hangs over and probably takes away some of the fun of the game.
Oh, absolutely. Once you make that major league debut and then you go back down to the minors, it's like you're everything is different around you.
Yeah.
To where, before you make that debut, it's just, this is part of life, minor league baseball, the kind of stuff that you don't like doing, it's part of it. And then all of a sudden you see that glitz and glamour of the major leagues, and
Yeah.
I think I had like 9 days of big league time. So just even those 9 days just completely change your perspective on everything. And yeah, and I kind of knew, like, I knew the kind of player I was. I wasn't going to be a Hall of Famer, probably would never be an all-star. I'd be lucky to, kind of stick around with the team, here and there in a bullpen, lefty scenario kind of thing. And just kind of had that talk with myself that was like, do I want to, you know, live that life of always being on the road, being away, 7, 8 months out of the year, that up and down, between majors and minors, if I was lucky enough to make it back. And was kind of just like, I think I'm ready to just, kind of settle down a little bit, be in
Yeah.
one place for a little while, have an address for the first time since high school. And yeah, so that all went into the decision.
Yeah. The one thing I want to talk about too is you mentioned having to transition right out of the game. We talked a little bit this before we started recording, but how was transitioning out of the game? Right, you had the opportunity to go back to school, and COVID hit, but were there resources there for you to transition? How did you kind of navigate that journey?
Kind of had to do it like on my own, and
Mm,
just, kind of talk to some guys that had done it before that I'd played with in the past. Um, but yeah, I mean, it was super easy to make the transition to go back to school because, there's structure there. It's
Yeah.
class, you know, move back down to San Diego, there's that structure still there. And so that part was easy. It was sort of like the transition from once I'm done with school to like, now what,
Yeah.
because there's no structure there. You got to, pave your own path and things like that. And, I graduated when I was 27, when I got my degree. And, all of a sudden I was a 27-year-old college graduate with the only thing I could put on my resume was that I played professional baseball. And so that was super stressful because I was always in the back of my mind, like, oh yeah, like people would want to hire me. I have not necessarily like work skills or experience, but I have, team building experience and working together with a group of people towards like a common goal. And those translate to a lot of things. And I found out very quickly that it's not necessarily the case.
Yeah.
People looking to hire.
We interviewed Josh Lindblom, and he said, like, when I finished up, he's like, that people were like, "Oh, do you have 10+ years of leadership experience?" He's like, "I have 13 baseball teams on my resume." Is that
Yeah.
does that
Yeah. Does
count?
that count? Yeah. That was the toughest thing. It was, the resume that I had was very weak, but I was like, just get me in front of people in an interview, and I can explain, I can talk, and I can get my point across to why I'd be a good addition. But that was the hardest thing, was getting past that initial just resume to getting them to sit down and talk to me.
Yeah, I have a buddy, Ray McIntyre. He was actually assistant coach at San Diego under Jay Johnson, or not Jay Johnson, the guy who came after Jay Johnson.
Mhm.
But he said the same thing because he was a volunteer assistant coach basically through the NCAA. He's like, I try to go into the work field, even coaching wise. He's like, yeah, I
Yeah.
have some leadership experience, but I don't have any work experience outside of just coaching.
Yeah, no, it's a strange space to navigate. Like, yeah, it's I was lucky enough. I worked for Upper Deck, which makes
Yeah.
sports cards, so that was a nice transition to kind of using my sports background to get into a sports company like that. So I was
Are you
lucky.
doing like marketing style stuff or?
Yeah, I'm like so my role is like community coordinator of sports cards. So I'm like the
Cool.
middleman between like the company and the collectors. So I get to talk cards all day with people
That's
like
pretty
online.
awesome.
So it's not too bad of a gig.
Were you a collector yourself?
Yeah, I growing up I was, super into baseball cards. There was a card shop not too far from my house, could, ride my bike there. So I was there all the time growing up, and then playing the minors, signed a couple of deals with Tops and had my own cards, and thought that was super cool. And then once I stopped playing, kind of got back into collecting a lot. So I've been trying to get all of my cards, and luckily they're super cheap now. So I'm happy to buy them for cheap.
Caleb's gonna be mad that he missed this podcast because he's a big card collector too, and he probably would have
Oh.
millions of questions related to that. So what do you have a favorite card that you own now?
Of myself or just overall?
Do you have some of the ones that you have out?
Yeah, I have a ton of like my own. I'm trying to get like the whole rainbow of my first
Love it.
Bowman set, and so the only card I'm missing is the 1 of 1, and I've never seen it surface. So I'm always looking for it.
There's just some random human in the United States that's just got that card. Probably
Yeah,
doesn't
it's
even know. It's
just
probably in a box somewhere.
exactly. They got no idea. They see it and they're just like, ah, that stinks. I have a 1 of 1, but who's this guy? But
Did you
yeah,
ever have any auto series autographed cards?
yeah. So in that same series, there was
Okay,
autographs and non-autographs and stuff. So I try to
nice.
get my hands on as much as I can.
That's awesome. Yeah, so I think it's cool to see that you have all these passions outside of the game, right? Because I think one, it helps you really deviate away from having your whole identity wrapped up in baseball and your performances, but also kind of helps you probably navigate and try to find new things to do as you transition to a career in life outside of baseball. So, are there some like ultimate life goals that you have now that you're out of the game that you're really striving for?
That's kind of been the toughest thing for
Yeah,
me because I've always been, super goal oriented, because like I said, since first grade, I had this ultimate goal of making it to the big leagues.
yeah.
And then, kind of once I stopped playing, that's been like the toughest thing. Like you talked about that identity of being the baseball player. Um, I never really looked at myself like that when I was playing, but once I stopped, it kind of became evident that it was like, no, this is kind of how I did see myself the whole time. It was, is part of my personality. And, everywhere you go, the people the people you grew up with, even like your family and stuff, anytime they saw you, it'd be like, how's baseball going?
Mhm.
How's this, how's that? And so once I stopped playing, it was, and then obviously I had the goal of graduating school. So I had that. But once that finished, it was like, now what do I want to do? So that's been the toughest part the last couple years is, where do I see myself in 10 years? Where do I want to
Yeah.
be? And I've kind of um, come to the conclusion that I think the biggest thing that I need is like feel like I'm having an impact, helping people,
Mhm.
especially with, my background. I think the thing that I'd like to do the most is, whether it's high school or college athletes, kind of being that like, sort of mentor, or, kind of being like an academic athletic advisor for
Yeah.
like a school or something like that, because I know firsthand how it is, especially in college with, the rigorous, practice schedule and, during the season you're all over the place, and then trying to balance that with, going to college, and it's not easy. And we always had resources for people that would help with that, but they were always
Yeah.
usually like they came from like an education background
Mhm.
and not
Yeah.
necessarily had that, you know, I've been in your kind of shoes before. So I think that would be super beneficial. And, I'm trying to find ways to be able to put myself in that situation. And, whether it's, going back and getting more schooling so that, I can land those kind of jobs and then make that impact from there.
Yeah, it's awesome to kind of hear your personality come out just in that statement, right? You can tell that you're a person that wants to give and give in, not giving away to help others and help them in their journeys that they're trying to figure out because you learn from your experiences, right? And you want to have that impact on others. And I think that's awesome. That's what I was going to ask at the next question too. Is kind of the personality you've developed too on Twitter. Always have some funny tweets, and has that always kind of been your personality in the clubhouse and then at the workplace? That you're just that kind of fun, easygoing guy.
I mean, I try to be. I mean, I think that'd be a question for the people around me.
Yeah,
I like to think of myself as that. And yeah, like I said, I even when I had a bad game, I like to keep things light and
yeah,
be easy to hang around and stuff. I like I like being approachable and not like people can't talk to me and things like that. So yeah, it's super easy on Twitter. I mean, mostly, especially when I was playing, because the New York Mets fans are kind of nuts on Twitter. So
yeah,
you get a lot of flack on there, especially myself because I didn't perform very well when I was in the big leagues. So you get a lot of those kind of tweets after the game and things like that. So it was easy ammunition to work with and just kind of be playful. And I know like like I'm so passionate about baseball, and so I understand where a bunch of fans come from, because they love this whatever team they root for their whole lives. But like
yeah,
at the end of the day, it is a game. Yeah, we all want to do well, we all want to win, we all want to see our teams win, but like you can still have fun.
yeah.
It's not the end of the world.
And there's human beings behind the players who are playing that game, right?
Oh,
I love
absolutely. Yeah.
And I love the perspective you have too of like whether you're doing well or playing poorly, that you're going to have that kind of same personality because you think about it, when you're riding high, someone else on the team's struggling. And when you're
Oh,
low, someone else is riding high. So it's like trying to find that balance where no matter what you're doing on the field, like be that person that your teammates can kind of always go to. And I think that's huge.
yeah. I mean, and it's in a game like baseball, it can just flip so easily.
Yeah.
You can be dominating, and then whether it's in the span of a game, and then bad stuff happens, or over the course of a month you're having a good month, and all of a sudden you string 3 bad starts in a row. Like it can just change at the drop of a hat. And so I don't know, I just like like I said, just keeping it light, kind of staying super even keel, and yeah, celebrate your victories and learn from your defeats, but don't beat yourself up or don't put yourself too high. It's I think it's better for everyone, that you're
Yeah.
around in that case.
Yeah. I mean, PJ, this has been an awesome interview. We have the one last question that I wrap up with, that there's so many things that we can already clip from this interview, but this is just one that we ask because we want the podcast to be an opportunity for fans to really get to know the human beings behind the players, but also want it for younger athletes to come and learn some lessons about mindset, about any advice that they want to kind of receive going on the same journey. So if you had one piece of advice for like the next generation of players that might be going through some of the same things that you are, what would that one piece of advice be?
I mean, the piece of advice that I would give is, I mean, just going off me personally, I was never the biggest guy. I was never the strongest guy. The hardest pitch I threw in the major leagues, I think, was 89 miles an hour. Um, but one thing I did pride myself on is that, I just had the utmost confidence in myself. If you believe that you can do something, and it's not just, go for it, but it's not just going to happen just because you believe in yourself. You got
Yeah.
to work hard. You got to, do the things that other people aren't doing. Um, but on the flip side of that, don't let it consume you.
Hmm.
Have fun with your friends. You don't need to, just bury yourself in whatever, in a pursuit of whatever you're going for. Have those outlets, have those friends, have those relationships, because whether you make it or you don't, like we talked about earlier, the people around you is, what makes it even better. Whether you're doing really well or you're doing poorly, the people around you kind of, make, everything better, if
Yeah.
you keep them close, and yeah, so I think just getting, just ending on that, like I think that's the thing I miss the most about playing is, being around those guys every day, and, showing up, and you're around like 20 of your best friends and just hanging
Yeah.
out all the time. You're around each other 24/7. Um, so yeah, it's kind of, that answer's kind of all over the place, but I think there's a message in there somewhere.
No, I think that's awesome. It's the importance of relationships, right? Kind of being creatures of our own environments and surrounding us with good people. And I think that's a incredible way to end on. And PJ, we can't thank you enough for taking the time to join us on Behind the Scenes. We'll probably have to do a second episode talking baseball cards, get Caleb back on, and
I
have
would
you
love
on
it.
some other time.
Absolutely. I'd be all over. I'd love to, do this again.
Yeah. Well, thanks again, and we're wishing you nothing but the best with everything.
Appreciate it. Thank you.